doing the introduction. And then what I'd just like to share with you is, once again, we have a call out for the community to join us in helping define DMBOK 3. We're going to be sending out a survey very shortly. And then there's also quite a bit of participation that we're looking for to help us guide and develop DMBOK version 3. So I know a few of you have submitted your names. I'll certainly keep you in touch with where we're going. So that's quite exciting. We had some kickoff meetings last night, and it was nice to see people like Dan Meyer and Donna Burbank, and quite a few people from around the world that are contributing to the version 3. It's quite exciting. So that's the one side, and then just really to thank Prasanna for writing the book, of course, and adding to our knowledge. We always enjoy that. Prasanna, I hope that your book does really well, and we're really honored to have you and to share this with you. And then also just to so many of the people that have joined. I see some old people that we haven't seen for a while. Gary, lovely to see you. Zahir, Christina, really nice to see everybody back again. So Prasanna, thank you so much for your book. If you could maybe just provide us with some background in terms of how it started and where you are. We do hand out a complimentary book to the person that's asked and shared some of the most insightful stories, and we'll get to that afterwards. Prasanna, if you're comfortable with making a decision at the end, please feel free. Otherwise, I'm happy to make that decision. But thank all yours, Prasanna.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start sharing. Is that it? Forward?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, so thanks so much, and I'll talk about the book in a bit, but I just want to start with the topic. And so what I wanted to discuss today is more about data governance, but in general, what I call as a data governance renaissance. A renaissance in the sense that we seem to have reached an impasse on data governance in many organizations. I'll talk about that. And so this is some things that are through my journey into the data governance space. And really, these are not hypothetical scenarios, but real stories and real strategies for me as a practitioner and as a leader in the field of data governance and data management for many years. And so a bit about me. I hope everybody is able to see my presentation.
Yes, we can. All good.
Okay, so thanks for confirming that. And so a bit about me. So it's an interesting journey that started in IT, and then I forayed into finance with data management, and now I'm leading a team of data stewards and technical ETL engineers who are working on curating data for a business transformation project. And so it's a greenfield project with very few parallels in the market on the scale of the data migration. So we are migrating data from around 26 countries across the globe, and with varying levels of data quality and varying levels of organizational maturity around data and data structures. So my focus for my career that I have kept is really operational data quality, which is the quality of the data in your ERP systems, in systems that support operations, systems that support analytics, and so on and so forth. And I am located in Calgary, Canada. Now, what I'm going to do through this presentation is maybe I'll go through a few slides and pause for any questions. And if you have any thing, please just ask or jump in with a question. I may not be able to see your hand, and so if someone wants to just coordinate that, it would be
Prasanna, I'll look after that for you. So I'll just tee them up and then interrupt when it's an appropriate time.
Sure. Thanks so much for that. So what we will be looking at today is introducing data governance. We'll talk about some real life stories around data governance. We will look at frameworks of data governance that actually have been implemented by me in the past. And then how do you form your strategy around data governance, right? How do you make it measurable? How do you bring success? How do you demonstrate your data governance strategy to the leaders as well as around your organization? Because you have to become a salesman at certain points of your journey, and you have to sell your vision. So how do you do that? And then we'll talk about some success factors and really conclude the journey over there. And so I will not be very bookish over here, but I just want to. I think one slide is required is that what is data governance, right? And you will see that there are varying definitions out there, and then I'll leave this slide open for a few seconds, and I'll let you pick which one you think is the most closest to your concept of data governance, or maybe none of these is really what you think is the real definition of data governance. But when you see a data governance institute, it basically defines it as systems, processes, agreements, and action, because I think it's the most comprehensive, as it addresses the more human component, right? People and emotions. It speaks to the importance of people and processes. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to speak more about the people and processes. It's less about systems and it's more about the underlying system upon which data governance is built. And this definition mostly addresses the core fundamentals around establishment of a common language, people, processes to govern data. And then when we look at DAMA, right, and they basically look at it as a planning, oversight, and control over management of data and the use of data and data related resources. And Tech Target looks at it from a very consumption side, right? And one of the things is that I have done this presentation in the past as well. In this session, I've added much more newer material as well. But this is one slide I feel is where we need to really look at what do we define it as, because if you don't know what it is, then we can't go much further as well. I'll just pause over here. Any questions or anyone wants to bring up anything? Yeah, Howard. Sorry, on mute, Howard.
One of the important things that I find that the Debunking version 2 has got is when it talks about data governance, it talks about shared decision making. And I don't think a lot of times we recognize what we need to do. And it's not about the data governance people making all of these decisions, but it's about us sharing that decision making with the business to help us choose the right direction.
Right. I'll just move on. And so some myths about data governance, because this is something I always come across, and I think this is one of the impediments that you're going to have when you are talking to leaders or around your organization, or talking to customers or vendors or people who are just practitioners in the field of data. And you'll see that one of the first myths is that data governance is the same as master data management. And really, as a DAMA practitioner, as a certified data management professional, I would say that really, if you look at the book, data governance is really an overarching framework which really binds all the various elements of the DAMA wheel. It binds master data management, data security, data integrations, interoperability of data, and a lot of things together. So it's not the same as master data management. So then the second one that I see is that let's start it as a side hustle, and then we can scale it later, and or we just do it big bang. I think both of them can be successful, but what I see is it has to be structured. And if you don't start with the right critical data elements, and I'll talk about that, what is a critical data element and or a control data element, and you will end up with a very high chance of failure. And understanding the sphere of influence of each critical data element is also quite important. Then you can gauge how each critical data element interacts with other elements of the broader ecosystem. I was just on a data governance program as an advisor, where they had started with a very big bang approach to data governance, where they did a lot of complex matrices to understand data ownership, and then they started setting up meetings with what was vice presidents and above. But what was not being brought up was why is this important, and what are we trying to solve? So if you can address some of those questions, and we'll talk about that a bit, then you really would have a much higher success than starting it as a side hustle or doing it as a big bang. Either would work, but your approach has to be really streamlined. Then the third one is that data governance stifles innovation and agility. Actually, data governance is not data policing, which a lot of people think, okay, it's just policing what everybody is doing, applying a stick, bringing in visibility to who is going wrong, or where there is bad data quality, or where somebody is not practicing things properly or not supporting organizational policies. It's really about bringing agility by bringing in better data quality data with trust and completeness. Then the fourth one is really an interesting one, is the data governance is an IT function. And really, data governance is not just an IT function, is how I say it. And when I presented this deck, I think a few years ago, and it has changed a lot since then. But this is another one where I was asked, okay, where should it be if it is not in IT? And my experience has been, it should either be in the data operations, in the data office if you have one, if your organization is matured enough, or it should be in the wing that does master data operations, or it can really be somewhere where you are managing data in a silo or somewhere, but it has to all be brought together. And I think it's more important to have this in the places which are not natural cradles for standing up data governance framework. They run the operations of the data governance framework, while the higher tier and strategic elements are part of a cross-functional environment. And data governance is not just about creating policies, it's about dissemination, adoption, and means to enforcement of the policies and data governance standards. And I'm going to talk about it more in my presentation. So I'm going to go over some real stories. These are not fake or made up stories or chat GPT generated content, but it's more real things that have happened in the past where I have been privy to this. And so this is the first one where there was a instance several years back where a market analytics firm requested information about a company's market share, and this was sent to IT manager, who sent to a developer, and the developer just ran a SQL query. He did not know where it was being run, and he did not quite understand where the data was going to get consumed when it was shared with the vendor. And the market analytics firm gets the numbers, and then suddenly the company's market share starts showing up as if it is 80% of the total market share, which was completely inaccurate, which was much lower than what it was. And then this becomes a huge problem because other companies start complaining that this company is publishing wrong market data and things like that. And now it becomes a big mess control, where you're now trying to rebuild trust and restore market reputation. And then the company, then it becomes a driver for that company to implement data governance and bring in this. So data accuracy, integrity, validation of the become important. And so this is one of those use cases where really no data is really better than bad data sometimes. And it's important to understand where you are sharing that data. And then this one, which is more close to my heart, is that this is during the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, where there were multiple warehouses that were storing a product in cold storage, and some were storing the same product in dry storage. And this was a firm which was actually into the food business, and that storage of product in incorrect zones led to a large wastage of product into thousands or millions of dollars, and really had a ripple effect on the company's already strained financial situation in COVID-19. And that was again one of the drivers for putting in robust data governance and really catapulting some of their data governance or immature data governance processes into a streamlined data governance organization. And so this is another place where I'll just pause. Any questions on these two? Otherwise, I'll progress a bit.
William, anything from your side?
No, I just totally concur. So yeah,
Okay.
I think everyone here has arrows in their back of these kind of problems. So Prasanna, you're 100% right in capturing it, because not everybody or not every audience especially is actually going to get these things, and stories make the best way to get a message across, right? That is invisible. So without a story, you can't see.
Sure. And that's why I don't share theoretical content much. I just go with what is more practical and real life. I think there's one more question.
Yes, from Michael.
Hi, yeah. Yes. Am I audible? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So quick question. I see this report. Gartner predicts 80% of DA governance initiatives will fail by 2027 due to lack of real or manufactured crisis. Now, in this case, we know that real crises are self-explanatory and you have to now react to those. But when it comes to manufactured crises, I also believe that maybe there's a role for simulated crises. This is a role for the operational risk department to probably own. And this might be a useful way to get business buy-in from all the other aspects of the business, because ORM is actually business-wide. What are your thoughts on that?
That's correct. So actually, the rest of my presentation is going to speak to that as well. I think the manufactured is not a shady word that I think because the real crisis is obviously the ones described before were real crises, right? But the manufactured is where your pursued crises are, right? Identifying risk. And so when you look at the left side, this could be where in the data security and information security space, right? There could be foreseen risks in having bad quality data or data architectures. Absence of data sharing agreements could also, or data contracts could also potentially be a source of such problems. And then there could be, then another crisis could be on the losses of the bottom line as well, right? Like degraded customer experience due to loss of data or product, bad quality data, misplaced product due to incorrect addresses. These are some of them. And then compliance is generally the most biggest key driver for manufactured crises or perceived crisis. I think perceived is probably a better word that you suggested, but I think manufactured is more which draws attention, I think. So thanks for that question as well. Yeah. William?
So I think somehow we need to get the MBA course to actually have a section specifically on the quality of your data before you make a decision.
Correct.
Because so many people are coming into this market not even thinking. I mean, they all assume the data is 100% perfect and they can make a decision on.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And so one of the things I'll also tell you is like using big terms like data strategy and governance is also gradually losing the senior leader audience, and really the sales pitch is falling apart as well. And so I'm going to talk about how do you create value and really start showing tangible output as well through this, so that you're able to sell the vision. But most important is really, if you don't have a solid business case, you're not going to get very far. And so what I'm going to shift to is strategies and frameworks that work and that really would be helpful. And what you see over here is a four-tiered data governance structure with cross-collaborating teams and things like that. But it's important to be flexible with this model, which I will explain in a second, to allow real life scenarios. And the more flexibility you have, and the more you are supposed to borrow as much of this, but really keep it as flexible as possible. And then at the top, what we see is that a steering committee, and this is absolutely important. If you don't have your senior leadership involved and really bought in, I don't think you're going to go anywhere really in this journey. Siloed initiatives often fail because nobody else thinks that's important, and that's why your steering committee, which provides not just the budget and the strategic direction or approves things, but just the mere presence of somebody who's at the top who's supporting this and acting as a sponsor becomes really critical on that journey. And then there is a data governance council because the top leaders don't have time or wouldn't really have a know-how of how the data in motion is really working. There has to be a data governance council, and this generally would be somebody like your manager and director level employees or supervisor level employees who are more focused on defining and enforcing data governance policies and standards, reviewing and approving data related initiatives, projects within the budget, identifying data related risks and proposing mitigation strategies. And they are the ones who are addressing conflicts and making decisions on data related issues as well. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I think this is an important role which many organizations do not have or have them as a side of the desk role, and which is not working out, is that they think that data governance is a side hustle, like I said, and they don't staff people to coordinate or manage it. So the most you can go up to is probably have a data governance director, or it falls under your chief data officer or something in more mature organizations. But at least you need to have somebody who is a lead, and the lead personality also should be somebody who can balance the people, technology, and process aspect, because building collaborative partnerships is going to be key for that role. And it's not just a data person job, but more or a technical keystrokes role, but is somebody who can work up and down between the steering committee and other data governance bodies, can work horizontally, vertically between the organization, and it has a mind and a mindset for monitoring data governance progress and metrics as well. And then one thing we have in Parkland today is, which is where I work currently, is a center of excellence. And this just came by in the last 2 to 3 years, and it's doing extremely well. And it is also, supported by the community of practice. And what it does is really the center of excellence that I lead right now is consists of full-time people who develop and maintain data governance practices and frameworks. They establish and enforce data quality standards and procedures. And their full-time role is to provide data governance training and support right now. And because we are in a business transformation, this office is there right now, but once the business transformation ends, then the job would be to transition that out into the sustainment model or into the future environment at the organization as well. And so the community of practice that we have is a great community around collaboration and knowledge sharing, where every month we meet. In fact, we are meeting today as well, and we discuss and develop some best practices for data governance implementation. This is a place where people talk about applications into generative AI, into application into different reporting tools, analytics tools, governance tools. We also use this data governance, community of practice, or it's basically a data community practice, not a data governance community of practice, but we use that to also, select our first metadata management tool as well at Parkland. So that is where it is. And then when you work on this kind of data governance models, you also have what you call as project working groups, because the data governance council is still a bit high level. and the project working groups are the ones who are really doing the keystrokes. They are identifying and addressing the challenges, and they are ensuring that there is compliance with data governance policies and standards. This is a fairly loaded slide. Any questions on this?
So there have been a few comments in the chat.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And they're talking about AI and data governance's relationship to AI. How do you see that overlap? Sometimes they create a completely separate governance, AI governance. What's your view in bringing these together?
Yeah, so what my view is that AI governance is fairly important. So, for example, right now we have some practical problems working with data sets that are in thousands and thousands of lines of data, and that has to be auto classified by human beings right now. And it's to be very specific, we have thousands of lines of purchase order data, and we're trying to classify it into material masters, or really into uniquely numbered material masters or material master data, right? And for that, this use case that I am working on right now, it requires me to seek the assistance of certain AI firms which can run retrieval augmented, generators and things like that, or RAGs that can assist the program. But where I am also now running into is that, okay, you have this whole thing that can support you and probably solve the problem, but what about the security of the data? What about all the policies around the data? And what we have right now is that as part of the Center of Excellence and the Community of Practice, we have developed the AI policies, but we have still not gotten it approved. But if the question is where does it fall? I think it should still fall under the data governance framework at an enterprise level, or under the data office, which is then supported by the enterprise data governance framework to ensure that there is clear, visibility into what's happening. But the case around AI, I do agree, it has to be brought into this, and we are, getting that also implemented into the AI. It's too early right now, but we are getting there. Yeah, William, go ahead, and I also see a question.
Well, as far as the AI is concerned, right, I see it as having two owners, because there's an element of it that is relating to data and those sort of things.
Correct.
But then there's an element of it that's relating to people and to the business and to the success of the business, which is not really the primary function of the data officer.
Yeah.
So for me, there should be a partnership between the CFO and the CDO on this.
Yeah,
because the CFO is ultimately accountable for the success of the business, and the CDO is accountable for the mechanism for this for the success of the business.
No, that's absolutely right. And so the AI policy we have is published by the data office, but it's supported and signed off by it's supposed to be signed off by the CIO and the CDO, which is the chief digital officer as well. And that basically is a cross-functional thing. But you're right, it's not the sole function of the data office.
Yeah, so I would hesitate. I mean, if you're going to have the CDO and the CIO, that's fine. But you've got to also have somebody in the business space like the CFO. You could have the chief operating officer, but actually it doesn't really have the whip. I mean, the one with the whip and the one who feels the most consequences of these failures is going to be the CFO, right?
Correct. And then we also have the legal counsel as well, his office as well, vetting these policies, because and Christina, you're right. And so what we have right now is our AI policies coming out of the data office, but our generative AI policy is coming out of the security office. So there is a bit of a fine line over there, where the generative AI folks are more concerned. The concern around generative AI is more coming from data security, where AI in general is becoming more on the data office. But yeah, there is a lot of opportunity really streamlining. I think AI in general by itself is going to become a major topic, and I think in a few years probably this graph is going to completely change, and has to incorporate several elements from AI as well into it. Any other questions? Yeah.
The other question was the relationship with enterprise architecture, enterprise data architects. How do you see their role in this aspect and governance?
The
I would
enterprise
like
data
to,
architect
sorry
can
to
fall under.
interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Prasanna, to interrupt you. Actually, I just want to elaborate my question more. I'm talking about the role of enterprise data architect from the point of view of, like, in our organization currently we are implementing master data management. So
You're right.
I feel that the enterprise data architect who has the overview of whole enterprise and who can coordinate with different departments of the organization should be part of the data governance team. This is what I mean. I have a question, that is this understanding correct? Because if someone, the data architect belongs to a particular department, then he will not have the visibility of the asset which belongs to the enterprise totally. So from this point of view, I was having this question.
Yeah, so let me just clarify. Even though the Data Governance Council is made up of members, they still report into their individual lines of business or into their reporting organization. They just come as part of a committee that really falls under the Data Governance Council. Just like the steering committee is a committee, the Data Governance Council is also a committee. Other than the data governance lead, there is nobody who is reporting really exclusively into the data governance function. Really, and the data governance lead could then be reporting either into the data office or into the master data operations director or things like that, right? And so in your case, it could still be that the enterprise data architect could still be falling under the IT or whatever business transformation function or master data management function is falling under, but still could be part of the data governance council. It is all about sphere of influence sometimes, which I say is how much of knowledge does that person have and what is his influence on the overall data strategy.
Okay,
I'll just
thank you.
go to the next slide now.
There's
Okay,
an
so here
interesting,
yeah.
Prasanna, there's an interesting angle to what Tariq said, and I've seen it happen before, and I think it's a good thing, Tariq. Not just to have your enterprise architect, not just the enterprise data architect, but the enterprise architect who has an overview of everything, to sit in on the Data Governance Council, purely because what I've seen happen before is somebody will talk about some kind of a data issue,
Right.
but when that person is having a conversation with somebody else in some other part of the business, they can add one and one together and say, oh, I know what your real problem is, by the way. It's a data issue because this and this is going on.
Sure.
So from that perspective, as a receiver, it's definitely, you need to have the guy there, and sometimes he can add extra value as to potential sources of downstream or upstream things that people are not aware of, right? And definitely strategic changes that are coming through.
Yeah,
Absolutely agree. Thank you, William.
yeah, I think it is more about each organization and how it sees it as well. But yeah, I do agree some of these roles that are critical should be part of the council as well. And so, how does data governance look in motion, right? And this is a combination of what I show over here is that the data governance framework is more the how of data management, which really is about achieving it's achieved via carefully choosing master data management and data governance processes tools, which comprises of the what and when of data management. So these are your governance metadata, what is your data policies, data standards and contracts, decision rights, business rules, glossaries. I also included the enterprise data model as part of this as well, because I feel that it has to be tied into your governance metadata, and I'll show you it in practice as well. in one of the slides, and then your terms of reference, critical data elements, which is which elements do you want to control, which is also a function of the Data Governance Council to understand and assign ownership to those critical data elements. And then the master data governance processes and rules, which are all falling under the data governance framework for really enhancing and maintaining. And then what I call as the enforcement layer, we'll see an example of that this today, which actually I'll show you a data quality dashboard, and that would show you how you enforce the how and what of that. And what I've shown over here is that you have several databases within your organization, but they consist of critical data elements. Often these critical data elements may be shared across databases, may be shared across clouds, right? But there should be a finite set, which is your governed data pool, which is not really the entire data set. And don't try to boil the ocean. If there is one advice that I give you, data governance, keep it limited, keep it focused, keep it to things which are of the most value to the business, right? What you think is of most value doesn't matter. What the business thinks is most value is what matters, right? And so often governed by systems such as MDM, data security tools, and data governance tools. And that really, flows into your operations and analytics layers, your data producers, and your consumers as well. Any questions on this? Yeah, forward.
So the one question I have in terms of the governance metadata is, and you mentioned that it's the value to the business. So there is alignment and relationship to business goals, business value. Is that where all of this stuff should be aligned to, especially on policies and procedures and standards?
Yeah. So the way we work right now is that the data governance office that we have, our data governance council has data owners that are from the business. So our governance for purchase to pay lies with somebody who runs the supply chain. Our ownership for the order to cash lies with somebody who runs the sales teams, or is at the top level in the sales teams, or is a director or something of that level, and he is informed and actively participating in the creation of these policies, and really sees the problems that he has being addressed by some of these things, and that is where they have time to focus on. And it's like more like what one of my colleague used to say is that the way he used to approach data governance, like, okay, yeah, you talk to the business and say, if you give me 5 minutes, I can solve 50 hours of your issues or things like that. And so that is where these folks become absolutely important to make them part of the decision making process and the data governance framework. Okay, yeah, so that's a great question. It's from Melissa. It says, just a question on best data governance operating model, centralized versus decentralized, hybrid, network, federated. Which model is implemented in your organization? So we have a enterprise data governance framework, but I am actually running a federated data governance framework. Why? I'm not going to go into each of these definitions, but what we are trying to do is that we have the ownership at the very enterprise data governance framework level, and we reach out for the to the owners only when there are decisions that are to be taken. But most of the micro level decisions, we actually have our own 3-tiered structure that we use within the business transformation wing, which is a federated data governance framework, and we make our decisions locally and then approach the enterprise data governance for the bigger and macro organizational level problems. So for example, if you're trying to put a vendor policy and really put some data security clauses in your data sharing agreements with a vendor, then it has to be an enterprise data governance framework decision. It can't be a business transformation related decision. But if the decision is when we're trying to normalize the payment terms for a particular vendor, for the vendor that we're bringing in as part of the data migration, that is more a project level decision which we take on our own in a federated fashion. So that is just what we have chosen for speed and efficiency. So again, this ties back to what Howard also put over there. It's about speed and efficiency. It's not that you should slow things down just because you have a data governance framework. Any other questions on this? Okay. And so I'm gonna talk about the example that I spoke about previously. Howard, how much time do we have? Like, just want to do a quick time check.
We always commit to sort of finishing around about 5. But for those of the people that want to stay on longer, we can continue a little bit longer, but just try to get through the core of your message by 5.
Okay, that's good. So this is more about the governance metadata in action. So what I show over here is that the problem that I mentioned in the stories is that, okay, you have warehouses that this particular company had throughout the country, and they were what you see below over here is the W1, W2, W3, W4 are the different warehouses in which the product was stored, and they each had different flags, which meant one warehouse was storing it as cold, one warehouse was storing it in the dry area. W3 is a warehouse which is in a French-speaking province, and that's why it was marked as such. And then one W4 had a completely different nomenclature where it was calling cold as CLD, right? And what you see over here is the product in the dry areas actually got completely spoiled, right? And so what we are doing over here is we are trying to apply data governance in action, and through data alignment or standardization of the data, which you use your data standards and contracts and the data policies and glossaries. You basically, and also one thing I want to call out is that you have identified this material master data as a critical data element, which is the first step in the journey. Then you are applying your data standards and contracts. You're basically normalizing the values. So you are turning them into accepted values. Then you go through your data cleansing where you're normalizing it. Then you might have to move product across. So you work with the business on that. And then you then update your enterprise data model as well with the aggregation of the model with hierarchies, so that you don't have this problem of not knowing what are the correct values, what is your correct reference data, and things like that. And finally, you publish your final master data schema. And this is how data governance comes into action into the governed data pool and the governed data model and MDM processes. Yeah, William.
Prasanna, yeah, 100% happy with what you're talking about here. My biggest experience with governance has been after the fact. So obviously being involved in migrations, right? Migration takes place, and then, for example, your customers decide that they are going to merge, right? Now you've got 2 customers. They previously had their own customer numbers. They've got their own files and all the rest of it. Now you're merging them, and you've got issues around history. How do you do your reporting? All of these different things come into play.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the strengths of governance is, how do I keep this ship on an even keel after we've had it set sail? Because getting it to set sail and I get the final master schema, that's great. But then dealing with real life and all those things that keep happening around you is a really important aspect, probably because from the experience that I've had, customers, if they can see that you got their customer name slightly wrong or whatever, they just won't pay on the invoice. They won't say anything. So you got to follow up, you chase up. 3 months later, you now get the issue. It's now 6 months before you get your money. And that becomes a real big issue. So taking care of it after the fact is really important for why you say to your different areas of the business, you need to have people involved.
Correct. And my next slide will speak a bit about that and on more about measuring the data governance as well, right? And so what I am showing over here is exactly what you're speaking about. Okay, you fix the problem. Now, how do you monitor it, right? And that's where the data quality dashboard comes in. I got years of experience. Actually, my upcoming book really is more diving deeper into this subject of data quality dashboards and building some good impactful data quality dashboards. And it doesn't just concentrate on just the subject matter as such, but it also applies most of the principles that I talked about, and really data readiness, system readiness, process readiness. But what I'm showing over here is that your enforcement metadata that we saw in one of those slides is really bringing in the parameters that you need to measure, right? And establishing the visibility and controls on data quality. And then your enterprise data model, your critical data elements, those are the ones you're choosing to monitor through this, so that, for example, you have the wrong name on a customer or you have a blank name on a customer, which should not happen, but it does happen in the world of data. Anything is possible. So how are you monitoring it, right? And then on the bottom right, what I'm trying to show you is that once you get these metrics in front of people, then you really use your feedback loop through your process and stakeholders to help to fix the problem in a sustainable fashion. When you are getting the wrong name, why are you getting it, right? It is not a ad hoc issue that fix one name here and the rest of the customers then have to complain to really come up with the problem, but more to fix it in a sustainable way. One of the things that I have seen is that data quality dashboards, if they are consumed in the right way, if the stakeholders participate in this process, then they are very efficient tools to really bring visibility and fix things in a sustainable fashion. Any questions?
Yeah, just a question from my side, Prasanna. Are you, it seems to be saying on the slide that the way to measure data governance is by measuring data quality. Is that
one of the parameters? Yes. Yeah. One of the tangible elements of data governance could be data quality, right? And it's not a full measure, because that could also imply data security, could imply compliance. Depends on the area that you're trying to measure through, right? But this is more about data quality dashboard as one of those elements by which you can measure data governance, but not the complete and full measure of
so things
the
like
data governance. Yeah.
So things like the value that it contributes to the business or the benefit, that's here's just one aspect of measuring data governance.
Correct. That's good. Michael?
Yeah, just in the same vein, do you have any interesting data agility metrics? So data governance also adds value. Agility may or may not be underneath value, but it is something which might be worth measuring.
Can you define what is data agility, like in your terms?
So
what
it could
you
be
consider? Yeah.
absolutely everything from the time to market for new products to time it takes to clear down technical debt, but also when it comes to things like even data migrations, for example, when you have a new system and you need to migrate data to and from, you need to be agile enough, and you need to be able to monitor how agile you are in doing these things. My thoughts.
Yeah, so that I have some slides on that as well, and I can get to that pretty. So I'll talk about that. Maybe that will address some of the things that you are talking about. I talk more about strategy and all, but I don't have any metrics related information. But that's a really good question. I think I should take note of that one for the future. Yeah. So so here I really, and I'm gonna jump a bit through this, is more I'm talking about data quality as a service which relies on effective data governance. And here I really talk about something which is data quality as a services layer. And when I spoke about when I spoke in the introduction, I really said I'm more interested in operational data quality, and this is something I feel is one of the centerpieces of data quality as a service, where data governance forms the heart of it. And this is not everything that it comprises of, but few of the things that really get affected by data quality, like for example, master data consolidation, right? And how the customer experience can be improved by removing duplicate and non-consolidated or conflicting master data records and things like that. So this is one of the slides I had, and then I'm gonna talk about the 3 phases of data governance, which is more into the strategy part of my slide deck. It's more about the planting the seed, really nourishing it, and then growing it. And really, the data governance function, one thing I want to leave you with is should become a magnet for data problem solving, and collaborations are therefore very important, right? And so there has to be a data governance strategy, and what you should be focusing on is your desired business outcomes, right? So your desired business outcome could be reducing risk exposure, driving revenue growth, and increasing operational efficiency. And this has to be a part of your steering committee vision and mission statement for your data governance. And that's how you should be driven and become part of the DNA for your data governance initiative. And so this is some of the data governance. So talking about agility, to answer your question, Michael, is that here I have shown, okay, reduce risk exposure could be your strategy, which is now tied to your objective, right? And that objective in terms is tied to some of the key results that you are trying to see, right? And this could be more tangible, like, okay, roll out the data security policies and DG artifacts. And this by itself is a huge ask from the market, right? Or from the business, right? And then you create and maintain your data risk register. So some of the actions that are going to come through your data governance work should be really into your data governance framework and data governance objectives, right? And so that is why it's important that you put these OKRs in place so that you can do that. And then again, I'm repeating this. You have to really sell your vision, and that is why it's important for the steering committee and for the organization or for the owners to see what value are you bringing in through tying your key performance indicators to your objective key results, right? And so in the previous slide, we discussed each objective and what key results it's gonna, and then that tied again to, okay, how much are you gonna really add in terms of not maybe millions of dollars, but at least some tangible value that is important to the organization, either it's tangible or intangible. Not everything can be tangible or in terms of dollar value, right? Any questions so far on the KPIs? Because this is fairly important. Like what this is not what I said.
There is one question from Jaap. He asked, what if you work with a non-profit?
Yeah, I gotten this in the last time I was in Calgary presenting this as well, and in another organization is what when you work within the non-profit or government where dollars are less important. I think in that case, you should really look at what value it's going to create in terms of customer experience. Is it going to elevate the difficulties that your customers have? I think there is always something that can be brought in. I think maybe somebody else on the call has another idea that I unfortunately don't have much experience working with government organization, but I did get this question in the past as well. Yeah.
So just I worked with the Saudi government, and
yeah,
all of them focus on operational efficiency and making sure that whatever the citizen wants and needs and stuff like that, they're able to provide it. So it would then relate not to millions, but how operationally efficient are we with interacting with our stakeholders, and not customers but stakeholders.
Yeah.
William, I see your hands up as well.
Yeah, so something that worked very nicely is when we really made this thing clear to the CFO that they could actually be looking at their data or their finance and actually be looking at the wrong stuff, and it would be telling them the wrong story. they made this risk number one for the business. When they made this risk number one for the business, the CEO said, in that case, I'm doing 5% of my KPI cascaded to everybody. And what that gave us the ability to do was to look at the performance agreements or the performance appraisals of each person from a perspective of what did they do with their 5%. And they gave us such insight into what people do from a day-to-day basis to try and make sure that quality is correct in their environments. And it was definitely an eye-opener. There's a lot of aspects that you can do, and that gives you the ability to give real KPIs for whomever needs to actually have a good look at it. Then you can create nice classifications and dashboards based on that.
Right. And that's a very interesting insight. Thanks for that. So what I am tracking over here is that you need to also have a roadmap when you come up with your data governance strategy. So maybe over the course of maybe a 2-year journey, how are you going to improve your technology capabilities? What's your product roadmap, data management undercurrents? And so this talks to a bit to William's thing, okay, what's going to be your time to market and how are you going to progress on your data management maturity through this as well. So that also should be one of the metrics that you can measure. I am not going very in depth into this because then it will become very complicated. But it's more about really measuring business values in terms of capabilities or time to market, and however you focus on what you had said were your objectives, right? Operational efficiency, risk exposure, and contribution towards revenue growth. And contribution towards revenue growth could also be more avoiding losses as well and really contributing to the bottom line as well, right? Then I'm talking more about the business value in terms of data assets. So evaluation of the enterprise data governance, and then how you go by critical data element each at a time, and then also derive value against your business objects. So first you start with probably customer, supply chain, then maybe go into cost center, and slowly also, if you look at the change management arrow, you are really also trying to limit change management as well by scaling against these objectives as well. So any questions before I conclude? Any general comments?
Maybe Prasanna, if we can conclude, because then we're getting to the end, and then people thank you, and then we can go to questions.
Yeah. So, like I think has been said in the chat, executive sponsorship is absolutely critical. You're not going to get far for anything. It's not just data governance. Then organizational change management, don't underestimate the impact of this. I would advise getting a change management practitioner on your teams if that is needed and at the right time. And then clear roles and accountability is absolutely critical as well. And then robust data quality or data governance frameworks, actually read data governance frameworks and standards are also absolutely important. And then this talks a bit about your 30, 60, 90 days plan. So the first 15 to 30 days, try to really establish your leadership engagement and really form a small DGO or develop the DGO and then start defining roles and responsibilities. And then 60 days, do an assessment of the data environment, pain points, review existing policies and documentation, then perform some data profiling, because only if you get deep into the data and understand the problems, would you really be able to solve them and really bring confidence into what you are set out to be. If you're not into the data and don't understand the problems in the data, you are not going to go very far. And then in the next 90 days, really critical data element identification, and then data quality remediation should become your focus after that. So then I just talk a bit about my book upcoming. It's still not yet released, but I'm planning to release somewhere in July and August, and I'll let you, Howard, decide who is the one reading it. I would also if anyone would really help me in reviewing the book as well, I'm all up for it and would really appreciate it before it gets published. And so I talk about organizational readiness, data readiness, system readiness, and overall really a full holistic view of how do you build a data quality dashboard. So in a sense, it's a mini data governance book, but more focused on impactful data quality dashboards. Uh, and then thank you so much for your time today and attending this. I'm sure you had other important things to do, but thank you so much for being part of this.
Prasanna, I think a few people put their hands up willing to help you review your book. So
Yeah,
maybe if
thanks
they
so
could
much.
just either reach out to Prasanna on his email,
Yeah.
or we can make those suggestions. Tariq, your hands up. Is that you willing to review?
Yes, Howard. Yes, exactly. I'm willing to review.
Thank you so
Okay,
much, Tariq.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Prasanna, one of the questions that I'd love to ask you, you talk about organizational change management. And when I saw organizational change management in the DMBOK, it really got me thinking about how important it was. Through my own personal experience, I realized that it was very important. And someone made the suggestion is to say, well, organizational change management is more about ProSci, and should we really have it in the DMBOK? Does it contribute to that? And I'd love to hear your views in terms of
Yeah. I think
this.
organizational change management is indispensable, as how I put it. Right now, we have a organizational change management practitioner. So I'll give you a personal example. We were almost supposed to go live with the project last year, and we had to delay the go live because people were not understanding or were not data literate on how the things would change for them once the project went live. And so we had to pay considerable attention into developing a data literacy program on how the reporting structure is going to change, how the reports are going to change, how new glossaries are going to come into picture, how new data structures are going to come into picture, how wherever they found data earlier is now no longer going to be the case. Then we also train them in terms of new forms, new ways of creating master data. And it is not just about process, but it is somebody who is, feels the data and becomes, and this thing where the person is an OCM person and also understand data is going to be a purple unicorn in the future, really, and how I see it. But it's absolutely indispensable. I think organizational change management, if it is part of the PM book, it has to be part of the DM book as well. Data initiatives are relying on OCM right now. Very critical.
Thank you very much. Just before we go to William, there's a question that Ashley asked some time back, and her comment was, a myth you shared earlier was that data governance stifles innovation or agility. And basically she's saying we've also found in our teams that this is quite the opposite, and providing policies and procedures run well and actually encourage people to innovate and test. Any personal experience from?
Yeah, so I think I support this. So I'll tell you when I'll take just quick 2 minutes. Is that when I started as a master data management manager in one of the companies, and I got in, the first reactions that were coming in for data governance was like a total opposition to everything. A person actually sent me a video of how the new policies and procedures or new processes were actually impeding. So he was doing something in 30 seconds earlier, and now it was taking him 10 minutes to do the same job because of all the rigorous things that we had implemented. So I took it as an insult initially, but then I took it as a challenge later, right? But then later what happened is what was seen as an organizational stifling mechanism, then you start becoming that magnet for people, and then people start coming to you for solving your problem because they understand that you're bringing value, solving problems for them. And so that transition takes time, but once it get there, you really become that sought after one where everybody is just pulling you into meetings where you don't even need to be, really. So that then you'll feel the other challenge of being pulled into many things and now trying to concentrate on what is important.
Fantastic.
I hope you reach there, really.
And can I just ask, Michael, you had a question on agility. Is your question answered there? Is there still something outstanding to answer your question that you raised about data agility?
I think that the substance has been answered, but in terms of the practical details, it will depend on the individual KPIs of the
That's
actual
correct.
organization.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. For example, your focus might be more on data lake, data products,
Yes.
and then you would have to define it for that one. And for example, in the case of security, it would be how many number of folders did you scan, and how many breaches or incidents that you find, and things like that. And it all depends on each one of them.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks.
And just before going to William, Melissa, I saw your hand go up. Any comments from your side? I'm not sure if you're still around.
I think she probably dropped off. I see.
I think she dropped off.
Here. Yeah.
Okay, William, we back at you, sir.
Okay, cool. So if I was to say to you, you're going to go boil a kettle, or sorry, you're going to go and make a cup of coffee, right? Yeah, you're going to check that you got your ingredients and all the rest of it, but you start with a kettle because you know that's the thing that's going to take the longest, right?
Yeah.
And the challenge is people do not, whenever they're going to do something relating to data, they don't start with the thing that changes the slowest. And that is the people.
That's
I
absolutely
totally
correct.
agree with you on that, Prasanna. Where I've seen this really work well is, and I can't give the name of the company, but you may just guess it, but it's a very large company, and it has major factories and things like this, plants and so on and so forth. They took the firehouse and down at one of the plants, and they took all the processes, all the procedures, and they mapped one full end-to-end of the entire business around the entire firehouse. And they invited everybody that was on that plant to come and have a look to find out where they were on that process. Where did they think? Who was upstream of them? Who was downstream of them? It just galvanized everybody. And when that did, it took, everything was just so much easier after that, because it was almost like, guys, we're one team. And then after that, it was a case of, right, now this is what's going to take place. And people could digest it as a whole rather than trying to figure it out on their own little space. That's a real good way to start your thing. And then the other thing is, start with the people. Before you even start putting all your other stuff, start with the people. If the people are not ready, to your point already, the people are not ready, you're going to waste a lot of money with expensive resources that you're going to buy and bring on, and you don't want to lose, and they're going to tread water while you're waiting to get the people right.
Right. And I think one of the thing that you mentioned in the first part of your statement, we did that in one of the community of practices where we mapped all the upstream and downstream, but that fire hose and bringing a real life feel to it, that's another level. I think it's a great example. Very nice. And then, yes, and the projects we are on, even if you lose 1 month, you lose millions and millions of dollars. And so OCM from the beginning is always a much more lower cost to pay compared to the effects of not having OCM. And so I'm just discovering it's become very critical now.
100%.
Thank you. Ashley, there's a comment from you. I'm not sure if you'd like to explain. Is there a question or just an observation in terms of how you've done?
Yeah, more just an observation. It was more for, I think, Michael, what he was after was more like agility metrics and like ideas for like setting success metrics, I think. So that was just, I was just more sharing from our side, like how we've done that, more from like new processes or experiments, and how we've set up like a governance framework around kind of clearly defining what you're trying to do, and then also using DAGs to kind of draw out all the variables that are at play, and then working out what things you need to measure. So it provides more of a framework than you just kind of rushing in and doing something and not really being able to measure the value or articulate the value at the end.
Right. Very nice. Michael, does that help you?
Yeah, thanks, Ashley.
Okay, fantastic. Great. Any more questions or comments for Prasanna? Okay, so it comes to the end, and yes, we'll wait for the book to come out. But Prasanna, is there any observation or comment that made you think that maybe you want to update the book? Is there any comment that really stood out?
Yeah, I think the one on the AI side, I think some of those elements have to be incorporated.
Okay.
And then that's one of the things I'm seeing, that it's absolutely important to gauge AI and effectiveness around AI as well.
Okay, great. So I'll share that with Melissa. I think she's left the meeting. But Prasanna, thanks again. I think there's so many people that said thank you very much for your time and the great session.